What's up, sons? It's Blind Rod with Son of a Tech once again, and today we're going to be talking Ravencoin, specifically NFTs on Ravencoin, as well as some NFTs on Ethereum Classic with Ryan and Alyssa. They're from JustNFTs.io, as well as a recent acquiring of Ravenist.com, two NFT marketplaces. The JustNFTs.io is going to support both Ethereum Classic as well as Ravencoin, and then Ravenist.com supports just Ravencoin. I think I got that correct. So welcome, Ryan and Alyssa. Why don't you guys introduce yourself? We'll start with Ryan. How's that?
Okay. Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm the CEO of Just NFTs. I have a background in tech. I have a background in construction. I have a background in just about everything that makes me a jack of all trades. I got into Ravencoin, or more or less, I got into cryptocurrency about 2.5 years ago, specifically Ravencoin, and I kind of fell in love with it. I'm by no means am I a maxi for Ravencoin. I love it. It's my home, but I'm like totally blockchain agnostic, right? So that's kind of why we started the ETC NFT site. It's kind of why we're branching into some other stuff. But I love all things crypto. I love all things blockchain. I love like helping people, and that's kind of why I started Just NFTs, was to really help bridge the gap between Web 2 and Web 3 for people.
And you do some of the back end as well, so we can get maybe a couple technical questions answered surrounding the differences maybe between NFTs on Ethereum Classic and Ravencoin.
Sure, I can do
Cool.
my best. By no means an expert in anything smart contracts.
Probably, yeah, probably no more than me at least. And Alyssa, what do you do for Just NFTs?
Hi, guys. I'm Melissa. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for Just NFTs. I actually started in cryptocurrency in 2020 from my husband, who is a miner for cryptocurrency. I have a bachelor's degree in business. And I just pretty much loved all things cryptocurrency. I got started in Ravencoin and just kind of grew from there. Being a female, there aren't really a lot of us in cryptocurrency in general. So I just created a voice for some women, and I caught the attention of Ryan, and he asked me to work with him. So now I do pretty much everything NFT related. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So we're gonna I'm just switching the scenes here so we can have everybody on camera. So the first question I have, this one is kind of one of my biggest beefs with Ravencoin. We'll kind of get into it because I want to know the technical answer behind this. Why is every single Ravencoin NFT marketplace require me to log in with an email and password that I've found so far? And is it possible to actually validate the user via a wallet and not have to do that? And if so, is that something you guys are working towards?
That would be a Ryan question. You're muted. Is he muted?
Yeah, he's muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, trying to not make you guys hear background work noise. Why do we make you use a username or email and password? Well, because there's no real MetaMask for Ravencoin. Will there ever be a MetaMask for Ravencoin? Maybe, maybe not. I think Mango Assets is probably the closest thing to a MetaMask you're going to get as far as like a web wallet goes. I think the difference in technology for Ravencoin and smart contracts is really what separates that MetaMask part of it. Ravencoin being, where it's your NFT, right? Once I send the NFT to you, it's yours, right? There's no taking that back. It's kind of Xander, Alyssa's husband, has a good like example when it comes to a pin. Like if I give you this pin on Ethereum, and I don't like what you're doing with it, there's always a string attached to it with the smart contract, right? I can pull that NFT back from you. I can pull that smart contract back from you. But with Ravencoin, if I give you the pin and I don't like what you're doing with it, that's your pin now. That's kind of the difference. So I think as far as like MetaMask ability, I think that's kind of where it creates the complexity because, with smart contracts, there's a level of, big brother built into it, right? With Ravencoin, there isn't. So MetaMask is kind of like a big brother in the sense of it allows those smart contracts to do what smart contracts are for, which are great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking crap about smart contracts, but there's definitely a lot of people out there that have malice when it comes to smart contracts. And I think with Ravencoin, it's very hard to, be malice when you give somebody something you can't take back.
I don't think sacrificing a certain amount of basically KYC for this is necessarily better, though. Do you understand what I mean? Like, I just don't think it's, I would rather see some sort of ability to connect a wallet and be able to validate in a more anonymous manner. Now, is that the end all be all? No, I think maybe what that means, though, obviously, is that we should have some sort of development push for some sort of wallet integration into dApps. Now, I don't have the technical knowledge for it. This is just, I'm kind of the guy that will see a problem and then ask if there's something we can do about it, right? So I don't know. Maybe you guys can put me into contact with somebody that could do something about it, but I am a little confused, though, as far as why wouldn't you be able to do some sort of asset tracking built into a website plugin or something or into a wallet, right? Like Zelcore can do it sort of to a certain extent too. Is there a way you could work around there? Or is that something that I need to have a different person on for?
Well, I mean, there is like peer-to-peer. There's a couple like peer-to-peer places out there. What is it? Raven Trader, I think, Alyssa, that does a peer-to-peer where you just really wallet to wallet.
Yeah.
Just NFTs, like originally it could, function that way, right? I mean, like nobody's really necessarily had a problem with it, right? Like the intent wasn't like, oh, let me just gather everybody's information and like, just create this thing that I can sell, right? Or hold people hostage because I have your information. Like that wasn't really the intent. The intent was maybe to help build a community and further connect buyers and sellers together, which is what we were all about when we originally built it. Ravenist itself, since it was acquired, that's kind of not how the original developer designed it, right? So there's a lot of complexities with redesigning and rebuilding the code for that. But yeah, I mean, Ravencoin itself does have, the ability to do a peer-to-peer transfer without having to do any sort of KYC on it.
Well, I know you can send it through there, but it's important that the marketplace has that option because the marketplace is where adoption is driven, right? And I think like having proper examples of non-KYC for users via adoption is a very, very important, especially with the blockchain that really kind of ties itself very closely to fundamentals, right? And if we get into the fundamentals of Bitcoin, then I think, full non-KYC is part of those fundamentals to a certain extent. So that's kind of where I've had like a little bit of, look, it sounds like there needs to be more development. And as far as that goes, I don't want to harp on it too much more. I would say, I don't think that anybody ever within Ravencoin or what you guys are doing with the NFTs, it has bad intentions. But I would say that, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. So we have to be very careful when we're looking at this and talking about fundamentals and then advertising a blockchain as being, adhering to the Bitcoin fundamentals and then having our marketplaces, push towards KYC. So these are the problems I run into as far as like when I'm trying to express myself in regard to Ravencoin. So hopefully that's maybe a little bit more cleared up with some people as far as that goes. And that's the biggest issue that I've had as far as participating within NFTs from a marketplace standpoint on Ravencoin. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so now let's talk about the fun part, I suppose. What got you into, I guess, first, Ryan? Alyssa kind of said that you got her into NFTs at first. You said you got into Ravencoin. What made you decide to go with NFTs? What was attractive about, non-fungible tokens?
So my day job, in my career, for the most part, it's come from tech, right? So my day job that I work currently, we did some like live auctions for some NFT stuff, um, and it was specifically with Ravencoin. And as time grew by, we or went by, we kind of stopped doing the auctions because there wasn't really the participation yet that we wanted. So I started thinking like after that, because I got involved in it, I was like, there's real no like NFT marketplace on Ravencoin yet. Like, yeah, there's peer-to-peer exchanges and there's some DeFi stuff and some DEXs and all that, but it's like there's no easy to use, user-friendly marketplace with a website, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, let me work on building one. So I spent about 2, 3 months, 4 months working on building one, pulling 15, 16-hour days after, working all day, right? So I went home and built one and just kind of fell in love with the community of Ravencoin, right? Like it's a really good community. There's, it has its ups and downs, just like any community, right? It's involving cryptocurrency. It's a very, hot topic item, right? There's, markets are good. Everybody's happy. When markets are bad, some people aren't happy. But that's kind of why I chose Ravencoin and NFTs because like I'm a Pisces and I like helping people. And there was no easy way for that to be done at the time. And that's kind of what I chose to do. And it's just kind of taken off since.
Cool. And do you think there's a future in NFTs as far as like down the line? This is a question I've always kind of had with myself because originally like there was the kind of the idea that like NFTs could be used for all these great things and then it kind of just turned into being used for, monkey pictures on the internet. And then I was kind of wondering if that viability is really there at the end of the day. How does that service, I guess the greater good or individual, I think from a financial sovereignty point of view, I think it does help like individual artists to a certain extent, but does it turn into, a laundering scheme at the end of the day to a certain extent too? What do you see the future of NFTs being?
So I've tried to like figure this one out myself a couple times. I think the true definition of an NFT, right, a non-fungible token, is kind of like it needs to be evolved at this point, right? Because there's so many real world like applications you can use for just tokenization in general, right? So like the definition of like a singular asset that is a one of one unique that, shows that, like you said, a monkey picture or, whatever, a Care Bear or anything, right? I think those are great. I think they have a long-term use case. I think, they kind of become like a new gold standard, if you will. Kind of like how Bitcoin's become like the new gold standard. But I think for the long term, it's really going to come down to like actual asset tokenization, right? Businesses and people or artists or vendors being able to tokenize literally anything and everything, right? If you want to be an IT specialist at a company, you want to tokenize your work phone so like what, I mean, are you going above and beyond? Yeah, totally. But like that's the beauty of blockchain. Like it's a basic pure ledger system that you can tokenize and tell anybody that this is what it is and it's irrefutable, right? So I think in the long term, the traditional NFT sense, I think, it's got a use, but it's not going to be what everybody hopes or thinks it's going to be. I think it's really going to turn into just asset tokenization.
So I think you used a really important word there as it pertains to Ravencoin, which was like irrefutable. And there is the difference between Ravencoin and other projects as far as NFTs are handled, where NFTs for Ravencoin are on layer 1, while on most other blockchains they're not, right? So could you give me a little bit more information on like the technical differences as it pertains to maybe the difference between the way NFTs function on Ethereum Classic versus on Ravencoin?
So on Ravencoin, you are on a layer 1, where Ethereum Classic, you are on a layer 1, but you have that smart contract issuance. And Ravencoin, I think he had stated before, it's always come down to a smart contract can always get pulled. And Ravencoin, it's not ever going to get pulled. Like once it's yours, it's yours. So in that sense, that's my technical piece of it. Ryan may be able to further like go technical into that, because my background again is not technical.
Yeah.
But this is obviously what I've learned is, Ethereum Classic is essentially a layer one, but you have to do a smart contract, where, Ravencoin is a layer one, but it doesn't involve that smart contract. And through Ravencoin, it's a click and drag. So it's very user friendly when it comes to that tokenization aspect of a unique one of one. It's literally a click file and you drag it over to your IPFS, and that creates that hash that creates that unique asset. So that's how I've always explained it, but Ryan may be able to go into further technical detail with that.
So then my question there would be, and thanks for the clarification, that's super helpful. So my question there would be, does that actually hinder the amount of things you can do with a Ravencoin NFT versus, because with the smart contract layer, right, I guess the idea is that you can do more with it. Hence why you do have the risk, as Ryan pointed out earlier, right? They can pull it back or something based on how the smart contract was written. Now, does that mean that you are limited by the tokenized asset being purely on layer one with no smart contract layer handling ownership, etc.?
So I think there are pros and cons, right? So inherently smart contracts, you can build royalties into them, right? So
Right.
on Ravencoin, if you're an artist trying to collect royalties on your NFT, in nature, no, because there is no smart contract, right? Once I send you that monkey picture or whatever, like that's yours. If you decide to burn the asset, you burn the asset. If you decide to sell it to six other, well, obviously can't sell it to six other people, but like you decide to sell it and then, six other times it changes hands, there's no royalty kickback.
Right.
So that's partly why, it kind of goes back to the KYC aspect of marketplaces, right? To be able to provide accurate, royalty and accurate representation for artists, right? So I think, yes, there is some pros and cons to it, but does it truly limit you? No, because you can still do GIFs, you can still do, MP4s, you can still do MP3s, you can still do,
Yeah, but it does sound
JPEG.
limiting on the way you can utilize it. So like if I was a music artist, for example, I'd probably be more inclined to use something that supported smart contracts so that I could get royalty on it over time, right?
Or you can use Ravenist on Ravencoin to get royalties.
Okay, so how does that function?
So you sign up with an account, you put your NFT in your collection up, you decide what royalty amount that you want for it, and every time the asset changes hands on the marketplace, you get your royalty kickback from the sale.
So how is that tracked?
Through the website itself.
Okay. All right, so that wouldn't be something that would be built into Ravencoin. That is supported in a centralized website, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And then my other question before we kind of wrap it up here, what do you think about the idea that Bitcoin maxis have? Obviously, we got to bring up the Bitcoin maxis, right? That the layer one should be simple, secure, and solid, right? Reliable, and that everything else that you should build on top of it should be essentially built within layer two and layer three solutions, etc. It's a fun one.
Well, I know that there are projects in the works for Ravencoin that are layer two and layer three. Right now, there is a project specifically, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, that is trying to create a layer two asset on Ravencoin. And Ravencoin was built for specifically asset tokenization, and
Right.
that's something that Tron, and the other developers wanted for Ravencoin, was to be, an asset tokenization per se. And I mean, I see where they're coming from, obviously, but at the same time, there are always going to be, new and how do I word this? New and ever evolving technology, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like, yes, Bitcoin is always going to be the number one currency, but is there going to be another coin eventually that comes up and helps, or or outnumbers, or does Bitcoin? Maybe not, but I think for asset tokenization, Ravencoin is always going to be that number one solution for those Bitcoin maxis per se. And I have heard that there are other layered solutions coming to Bitcoin for asset tokenization, which is a whole nother subject in itself.
Yeah.
But I think, Ravencoin was specifically built for the asset tokenization piece.
I got a kid yelping over here. So maybe since we're running out of time, I do want to get Ryan's thoughts on this. Let's hang it up. We'll start the call again. I'm going to go check on the kiddo, and then we'll get a little more time by doing this. So I think what I'll have to do is send you an email with a new Zoom invite. Okay? Does that sound good, guys? And
Sounds good.
All right. I'll do that in just a second. Thank you guys so much for understanding.
So just to clarify, you want my feedback or opinion on how I feel about that?
Yeah.
I think everything has pros and cons, right? I mean, that's just how the world works, right? Everything's got pros and cons. Do I think that layer 1 blockchain is better than layer 2, or do I think that layer 2 is better than layer 1? No, but I think for the depending on the use case that you're trying to use for your blockchain, I think is where you really want to look at it, right? Like, do I think when Bitcoin originally came out, it was fantastic, it was great, it still is, don't get me wrong, but like the blockchain like significantly slowed down as far as when people started using it more, right? So the Lightning technology that they introduced on layer 2 was fantastic. It used to be a huge problem when I wanted to transfer Bitcoin to somebody, and I got to wait half a day to find out that they got it or not. But do I think there's advantages of layer 1 over layer 2? Yeah, because you have your safety and security that's there that you don't have to worry about. But is there advantages of layer 2 with?
I think the argument, just to clarify, is that if you introduce too many things too quickly into layer 1, that you introduce security issues, right? So the idea is if you add something, like in the case of Ravencoin, asset tracking or tokenized assets at the base layer in layer 1, that you could potentially introduce additional attack vectors, issues, security problems, and so on. So that's the reason why I asked that question. Also, it's because it's one that's brought up by Bitcoin maxis with me a lot. So I wanted a good answer.
Yeah, sure. That's totally fair, right? I mean, like with anything you do in life, right? When you're coding and programming, right? If you're not 100% behind your code, or you don't have enough eyes looking at it, or you're not fully vetting your code, right? There's always the potential for errors and issues. But I mean, like, does that mean that it could be wrong in the first place to put all that in? No, but like, look at Google and look at Apple. It's like it's the same thing. You've got multi-million-dollar companies with multi-billion-billion-dollar budgets that put that behind their security and everything, and they still get hacked, right? So it's like it all comes down to if somebody really wants in, they're going to get in, right? I mean, you could spend all day sitting there.
Well, blockchain is specifically different, though, in the fact that it has to be completely decentralized and used by anyone and immutable, right? So it's paramount that the transactions on the ledger are immutable, right, permanent, and secure, as opposed to, sure, if we had a centralized entity like Google or something like that, or Ethereum, oops, sorry. If we had something like that, then sure, you add in reversible transactions, you add in the ability for the devs to yank it, right? You got your credit card transactions that you can reverse and some sort of centralized entity that controls it. I think with blockchain, from a fundamental perspective, though, we have to set the security. I think you have to basically set the security and the immutability of the blockchain as paramount fundamentally.
Right. Didn't Bitcoin just a couple months ago have the issue where a guy was able to send the same Bitcoin to two different people?
I didn't look at that one, so maybe you can educate me on it.
I didn't look into it too much, but I mean, if Bitcoin maxis, and I don't have anything against any blockchain, right? Like there's positives and negatives to all of them, and I'm not here to like talk trash about any of them. Like I'm
Right.
here
And this is a
in the crypto
philosophical
space,
conversation
right?
too. Right.
But I mean, if Bitcoin maxis really want to talk about how amazing Bitcoin is versus other blockchains and other layers and all this, it's like Bitcoin has its fair share of problems over the years of growing and building itself out too. It's like it wasn't perfect from the get-go, and it's never going to be. That's why you develop, right? That's the core value of being a developer, is building bigger and better and more secure. So, I mean, Bitcoin by no means is it perfect, and will it ever be perfect? I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a Bitcoin developer.
I just find it like philosophically interesting, right? Because if we're going to be building, right? How fast do you build while also maintaining like security and the fundament? Just basically, how do you build and then maintain the fundamentals of blockchain? And where does that end up? Like, because the idea is if you do it too fast and you do too many things on layer one, that you introduce more problems, right? So I think there's some validity to that personally. Now, in relation to Ravencoin being built like ground up for tokenization, is an issue on something like Ravencoin? I don't know, right? I would say that it's probably less of an issue than if it's ad hoc patched in later on via a hard fork, right?
Right.
Because you would assume that if you're at base layer and it's from the inception, that there's some sort of protection going on there, or something that's been figured out that'll make it immutable, right? So it's one that I bounce around a lot with Ravencoin because Ravencoin fundamentally handles it different. I think the biggest, so from what I've learned today, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. So as far as marketplaces go, until we get some sort of application that connects, your wallet via a web plugin, something like MetaMask, etc., there will need to be some sort of KYC for NFT marketplaces right now, as far as we understand it. Does that sound fair?
But I mean, like, what's your definition of KYC though? Just to play the devil's advocate, right? Like, what's your definition of KYC? Because I can go on to Gmail, or I can go on to Proton Mail, or
And
I can go on to
spoof it, yeah.
Ymail, and I can spoof any email I want, and I can make up whatever username I want on Ravenous. We don't ask you for your address. We don't ask. Yes, do we offer people the ability to actually KYC with us? 100%. But that's not a requirement to use our platform. But I mean, to sit there and say like, oh, KYC, but we're not really KYC. You can go spoof an email and use a username and be anonymous,
I
right?
understand, and that's been an argument that's been around a lot of the crypto space for a long time, because there's been plenty of ones that have like had that, right? We've just had this actually recently with something called Ironfish, which is essentially supposed to provide basically an SSL type service for Web3. They're doing a test net right now. Well, they're doing an incentivized testnet. The only way they can do an incentivized testnet is if you register with an email and a password. Sure. I do have a lot of the community that I've talked to. So this comes from my community, right? My community does find that is a form of KYC. Obviously, it's a light form of KYC. I'm not saying don't use your product, but what I'm saying is it needs to be clear that to solve it fully, that would be the solution, would be like a MetaMask solution, right? And then secondary to that, the audience needs to be aware that that is what they would have to participate in. The other thing to that too, though, is if we're talking about asset transfers, tokenized assets, all that sort of stuff, when we start talking about blockchain too, sure, I could spoof address, do all that. I have to be very careful by creating VPNs, connecting to certain VPNs, making sure that I only connect to that email via VPN. And even then that can probably get tracked back to my IP. So eventually, like if the Fed wanted to figure out who owned A, B, C NFT, it's easier if there is some KYC connected to it. Proton, like you said, probably going to be a better option, right? It's just how many steps does the user now have to take in addition to to just having a wallet, right? So that's really where, like, philosophically, I start to like kind of think, me personally, I start to think about it. From your point of view, like, I'm not trying to say, oh, you can never have any KYC period, but I will tell you there is a segment of the population within cryptocurrency and blockchain that do feel that way. Right.
Right. So let me throw this out there then, and let me get your opinion on this. Now you say, you know, you have to use a VPN and everything, which I don't know many people in blockchain that don't use a VPN. So you're already inherently using a VPN by being involved with cryptocurrency usually, but you have to with MetaMask, right? I mean, if you're connecting to a website, right? For 100%, let's use OpenSea as an example, right?
Right.
Okay, you connect your MetaMask to OpenSea. You're still being tracked by OpenSea by connecting to their website with your IP address. So there's inherently a KYC of sorts already, like by just using their website.
Right.
No matter how anonymous you want to be, VPN or not, like that can still all be tracked back. And newsflash to anybody who's out there, right? Like if somebody's got a warrant because you're doing some shady stuff and they can do all that, you know, then those companies out there, OpenSea, NordVPN, all the VPN companies, they're going to give up the information that they're going to give up to the people that have the power. So like, yeah, I'm all for, you know, decentralization and DeFi and anonymous and this. I'm not saying that, you know, I need to know who you are, where you are, why you are, but like, it's unfortunately the way of life. It's very, very hard nowadays to be completely anonymous and to sit there as people or members of the community and say that, you know, KYC is bad or any way, shape, or form. And not to say that that's what they're saying, right? But to just say that, you know, completely take KYC out of the picture, that's kind of hard to do that, right? Because by just existing in life, there's factors of KYC.
And I understand that argument completely.
Buy food, right?
Yeah.
You go to the grocery store, buy food, there's KYC, you know?
I understand that argument completely. I just have to also adhere to or get the answers to the questions that we need, right? And then we also, like, the fact is, like, from my perspective, like I would say, the least amount of steps to prevent all of that does make it easier, right? So
yes,
I think, like, you know, I got to trust you with my email. You probably from your website can tell which IP I'm connecting from. So I have to trust that centralized entity. I'm not saying I don't trust you. I'm just saying these are what like goes through my head whenever I'm like going through the process. So I think you bring up, you know, very good points. I think that they're valid, right? I've heard these arguments before. They're fascinating and entertaining dinner conversation topics as well, right? Well, IT ones if you're a nerd, but I love having these conversations. I could do it all day because it really does come down to that, because then we could go all the way back to like the cypherpunks, right? And start to have that philosophical debate of like, should citizens have access to encrypted email or not, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there'll be that argument once again that comes up that says, well, if the government really wanted to, the CIA, blah, 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 they could crack your encryption. So there's no need for you to have it anyways. Right. And it's just, for me, that's not a good enough argument in a lot of cases. Not. So
no, it's not.
This is where we get into that kind of, like I said, dinner table conversation. I'd love to sit down and have a beer with you and talk about it for like 3 hours. For sake of brevity, though, I think we've harped on it enough. Tell everybody where they can find you and your stuff. We already got your Twitter at @just_NFTs. Where are the websites they can find you?
Go ahead, Alyssa.
That's Alyssa's job. I heard.
So Ravenist is ravenist.com. Our Twitter handle is @ravenist.com because Ravenist was already taken, so it's @ravenist.com. just_NFTs. JustNFTs.io is our main site, and there are tabs under there that take you to our marketplaces. And the regular Just NFTs handle does handle Ravencoin and Ethereum Classic. So we will be tweeting both marketplaces on that one handle by itself. And then if you want to find me personally, I'm at CryptoLissa. And Ryan's, I think, is at Ryan Murray 89, I want to say. And then our emails are all on there too. So
perfect. Send me yours and Ryan's. I already have the rest. I'll put it down in the description below for everybody that's watching. Make sure you go check it out. Thanks for the conversation surrounding Ravencoin NFTs and Ethereum Classic. I wish you all the best with your projects, and I hope everything works out for you guys, and that we get to have you on again. Maybe we'll have a full-on conversations surrounding encryption or something like that, Ryan, at some point. But
Yeah.
as far as the crowd goes, thanks for watching. I'll see you next Tuesday. You can hit that like, comment, subscribe, and that share button if you think anybody would be interested. Peace. For additional content that also goes into more opinionated pieces surrounding the politics around crypto, make sure you check out sonofatech.locals.com. There you can become a member for free or even choose to support for basically additional content at $5 a month. It's helping me stay alive through the crypto winter.